Recording started.
You know how to sync?
Oh,
Did it work for you? No, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, because you need to pick my audio, so it's fine now. Okay.
Yep.
Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas. I'm the community manager for Stars Reach, and today we are here with Raph Coaster, and we are gonna start together a new video series, right? Talking about the game and how everything evolved over the past few years. Okay, I think that we can start, right? Do you have anything to add?
not really. Hello.
No? Okay, so thank you for watching. Okay, jokes apart. All right, I have a few questions ready. First question that I guess it is like the beginning of everything, which is what inspired the creation of Stars Reach? Was that one day you woke up and I was like, I got this idea, or was that a long process of thinking?
I have been dreaming about making a game like this for 30 years. So when I was working on Ultima Online back in 1998, I was asked about coming up with a follow-on game to that. And I started pitching the idea of doing a science fiction MMO back then, one with a galaxy full of planets that you could travel between and trade things, and also get together with your friends and build up settlements on the planets. And I was inspired by lots of games that had been around in the 80s and 90s, like Privateer and Elite and Sundog and Starflight and Star Control, and probably the oldest of them would be Mule, which was a game about 4 players coming to play on a single planet and build up their settlement together. And we actually pitched that and it got turned down. Then we did get a Privateer Online off the ground and it was canceled. And then I left and I did Star Wars Galaxies. And we did pull a lot of ideas from those pitches into the design of Star Wars Galaxies. And then I never got to work on the idea more for a long time, right? And when I decided it was time to come back to MMOs, because I saw that the world was ready for a new kind of MMO, that's when the ideas started coming back. And I started thinking about how can we take some of those ideas now that we have better technology to build them with.
All right.
You know, the cloud is there. It lets us do things in a more dynamic way. So I basically brought all of those ideas back and started working on it in 2018 and 2019 before we started Playable Worlds.
Okay. How did the idea evolve from concept to development? For example, what was your, I don't know, first employee you worked with, or your first collaborator, where like the first light, we can call it like that, right?
Yeah. So I actually wrote down the high-level vision for the game in what I call a vision doc, which is like a 40 or 50 page document that described all of the different systems and how they'd interact, how the high-level technology would work, generating planets, simulating worlds, all of that kind of thing. And I had that before I went going to look for the team. I used that and a pitch deck in order to raise money along with my co-founder, Eric Goldberg. And we went out there to raise the first money for building the game. Then we were able to hire the initial core team. And some of the first folks were engineers and an art director, several people that I'd worked with before that we could do prototypes with and test out some of the ideas that were in that doc.
Mm-hmm. And when you first saw, for example, the first prototype, do you remember that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think we can probably show video of it. When we started out, we actually started prototyping using Unreal Engine. And people who follow the project today know that we actually run using Unity as our front-end renderer. So the videos that probably are playing now, overlaying this, are those are all from early Unreal. And the very first things that we chose to prototype were the world simulation, because it was the highest risk thing in the whole project.
Yeah,
and we
correct.
knew that if that didn't work, the whole rest of the design needed to change. So we started out by doing some design on paper and whiteboards and that kind of thing. And then I actually made this very simple 2D prototype that was just isometric graphics, but water actually flowed and mud splatted and rock didn't, and that kind of thing. It was a very simple prototype, and it was very, very slow. But it demonstrated that the ideas could work in a tiny scale. Then I gave those to the engineers and I said, can you take these and make them much faster and much bigger and scale more? And so they ported it over to C++, DLL, made it faster. Then we connected that up to Unreal Engine, and we did actually get it running where you could run around in a world where water would pour out from lakes. You could set oil on fire, all of these kinds of things, and started solving the early problems. And that's when we knew that we would be able to build this game. That was the big unanswered technical question, was whether or not this particular piece could work at scale. And once we saw that it did, it was the biggest barrier. We knew we could make something like the game I had in my head, right? Plenty of details to figure out, but the big question was answered.
And that, I guess it was a fantastic feeling, right? To see something finally alive.
It wasn't just a great feeling. It was also a little bit magical because, bear in mind, we're doing this in 2019, right? And sure, there's Minecraft and the like are out there, right? But some of the things that we were doing were just not things that were really out there. You didn't see them, right? So the first time that we saw water flow out and cause a whirlpool up at the top, or set a whole thing of oil, a big old lake of oil on fire, and watch it burn down and actually get so hot that the rock started to melt and bubble. Things like that were just sort of magical, right? It was like, wow. And I remember also something that happened early was we had to figure out how to make it so that you could tunnel without all the caves collapsing. Right? Because everything obeyed gravity, which wasn't something that you tended to see. So I had to go off and figure out a way to make that work. So it was a fun time. Lots of prototypes, standalone prototypes that weren't in the game. Sometimes they were just spreadsheets, and we would simulate things in the spreadsheet to see if the algorithm would work before we try to code it.
Before you mentioned something about Unreal and then going to Unity. Maybe this is a too technical question, but why Unity and not Unreal? Because many say, Unreal is the best, Unreal is the next level of everything. But also, following my own experience, I know that Unreal has huge limitation when it comes to realistic, for example, simulation, or to gravity, or how things communicate between each other, right?
Yeah. Neither Unity nor Unreal were built to make MMOs. And there's a bunch of things that MMOs demand because they are, they're just very demanding software, right? They're big, complicated. They're by far the hardest kind of game to make. And we always knew, using either engine, the big thing that we would want to use is the front-end rendering, right? The graphics.
Right.
But both of them use a networking model called replication, right? Where you basically try running the same game on the client and the server. And they call that a headless server, right? Where you're running the game without a renderer on the server side.
Right.
Well, if you think about that, that doesn't make a lot of sense for MMOs, because in an MMO, you want the server to be running a huge simulation compared to what the client is running. So it's not the way that MMOs are traditionally built. And when MMOs use Unreal or Unity, they generally have to make their own custom back-end server. They can't use the one that comes with the engine. So we knew we would need to do that anyway. And on top of that, we were planning on doing a lot of things that were lessons from my last game studio, which was called MetaPlace, where we made a very cloud-native kind of architecture where assets could stream down on the fly instead of being built into your client, where game logic was written in scripting on the server side so you could hot reload and update the game without needing to patch it. We knew we wanted to do those things because they were, to our mind, the future of running game services, right? You want to make it as easy for developers to update as you can, so that it's straightforward to do those things. So those also were not things that the Unity or Unreal were designed to do out of the box. So we knew we had to do a bunch of custom work. We worked with Unreal for almost a year, and we started hitting limitations. We started hitting a wall, and the rendering was amazing, and the toolchain for art was amazing. They're both great, but Unreal is, I guess, it's really tightly integrated. Like, when you started pulling on the networking to start replacing some of it, like the animation system came with it, if that makes sense. It was just really, really tightly integrated.
Yeah.
With Unity, when we pulled a part off, the rest of it stayed put. It was more modular. And so we spent, this was a huge decision for us. We'd already spent a long time working with Unreal, and we did a detailed evaluation about how much it would cost us to get what we wanted. And it was just going to take us longer and be more expensive with Unreal. And since we are a small startup studio, we made the decision to go with the path that was cheaper for us to build on.
So after talking about technology and about this magic, right? So what makes Stars Reach different from other MMOs? Why is so special, for example, for you, maybe?
Yeah. Lunch appeared. I will eat it after. I've been playing online worlds, MMOs, MUDs before it, that kind of thing, since 1993. And that means that I've seen an awful lot of designs and an awful lot of patterns, right? And I've been making them since 1994. And that whole time, you're always bumping up against the limitations, right? You're bumping up against what can you actually accomplish when you're building a world right now. When we started out, we only had text. That let us do things that are very expensive to do in graphics, right? But it couldn't be real time. The internet back then was very laggy. You couldn't have anywhere near as many people in one world. There were all kinds of limitations, right? And so at any given moment, you're working with the limitations. One of the things that happened over time is the experimenting kind of stopped. It started getting to this point where people said, this is what these games are. And people stopped trying really new things. They stopped really experimenting with radical new ideas. When we did Ultima Online, some of the ideas that were considered radical were having a player-run economy, having crafting in the game, being able to dress your avatar and see that on screen, being able to decorate a house, being able to play peacefully rather than only playing combat. So you could go fishing or grow crops or be a blacksmith. Those were radical ideas at the time. And people made fun of us for having them, actually. And so later on, they made fun of us for having dancing in Star Wars Galaxies. Today, you can't turn around. Every online game has dancing in it, right? But they made huge fun of us for having dancing. And so I've always been interested in pushing the boundaries because I think of these online worlds as being alternate realities, and bringing in more ways to be a human is pretty important in that. You want many ways to be a human because there are many ways to be a human in real life. So Stars Reach is trying to do that. It's trying to make an alternate reality. And along the way, we are basically asking questions about, does this really need to be part of how MMOs are made? Why do we take this for granted? Why do we assume there has to be levels? Why do we assume that the map is static and stays put? Why do we assume, the progression system and so on? And so with Stars Reach, I wanted to go back to the beginning and say, if we were designing an MMO from scratch, given what we know now, given what technology lets us do, what would we do differently? And that's really what leads to what makes Stars Reach different. The fact that it's a galaxy of planets that come and go, which means that everybody could have their own home in real estate. Most MMOs have very limited real estate. Most MMOs, their map only grows. It never shrinks. Most MMOs, the map is fixed. It never changes. Players can't leave a mark. Just that one change in assumptions changes everything about how you play in Stars Reach. So I think to me, ultimately, it's about reinventing what an MMO can be, what an online world can be, and questioning all of those things that we take for granted and have taken for granted for decades now.
Wow. Okay. Amazing.
Big answer, I know.
No. It does. Like, I'm impressed by the huge amount of thinking, not just work, behind this project.
Yeah, I'll give you one example, right? Mm-hmm. Even when we did UO, we didn't use traditional levels, right? And I didn't use levels in Galaxies either. Why is that? Well, where do levels come from? They come from playing Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yeah.
And in Dungeons and Dragons, you have a group of only a few people, 4 to 6 people, and you're all going to be within a certain level range, right?
Correct.
When you go play you're playing an adventure or a module, you are all level 7 through 9, and you're leveling up together, right?
Yeah.
Which means that when you run around and you play, if you're level 8, you don't tend to see level 1 players with you, and you don't see level 50 players with you.
Correct.
Right? Correct. When MUDs and the early virtual worlds were being created, they used levels because it was a wonderful progression mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
But it immediately creates the challenge that you are seeing the 50s and the 10s and the 1s in one place at the same time. Right? Yeah. And because you don't play in sessions with only your friends, it means that you and your friends are all advancing at different rates.
Yep.
And that means that you can't adventure together anymore. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that becomes a problem because you come in and now you're level 1 and your friend is level 10 and your other friend is level 50, and now you can't do anything together. Right?
Unless they adapt to your level. They go back. But
unless they adapt to your level, yeah. Which lots of MMOs ran into this problem, and then they had to add ways to adapt to your level. Mm-hmm. And there's mentoring and sidekicking, and there's all these terms for all these ways to do it. But it's a problem you didn't need to have in the first place. Like those are that's like a hack on top of the original problem, right?
Yeah, you create 2 problems.
The original problem is maybe online worlds shouldn't have had that kind of thing happening in the first place. Maybe everybody should be people, and there are ways for you to become more powerful and progress without pulling you apart, right? But we just take for granted the level system from Dungeons and Dragons is the right way to do it. And maybe it isn't. And so we decided on UO and Galaxies and in Stars Reach to have a different way of progressing your character so that you don't have that problem and advanced players can play with newbies. And it works fine. We have decades of evidence that you can make a game that way. So it's one example of sort of looking at the assumption and going back to the very beginning of it and saying, well, was that the right choice really? Right?
Mm-hmm. Talking about challenges, because we're speaking about solutions that probably not so many game companies try to bring up when building new games. What were the biggest challenges in bringing the game to life?
Well, you always have to worry about, is it fun? So that's always one of the big challenges. But really, I would say that the big questions for us ended up being about wrestling with the technology, getting our intended architecture to work inside of Unreal, Unity, inside of modern game engines. Solving those problems was really hard. Mm-hmm. And then unquestionably, one of the hardest problems for us was COVID.
Oh, right, I remember that.
Yeah, so that hit when we were just 1 year in. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard because we had built our studio and our culture around the idea of being a small team in one place that was super collaborative and hung out together in the studio, that we would play games together in order to look at them and adapt features and try things, that used whiteboards all the time, and we were very visual, and all of those things didn't work when we had to go remote. And it was like blowing up the company culture and having to start over. It was really hard. Very difficult adaptation for us.
And now everyone is remote, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have adapted, but it is a different way of working, right? You don't work the same way when it's people you see every day in person and when it's people that you see, online. Miro is a wonderful tool, but Miro is not the same thing as sketching on a whiteboard together.
Right.
They're just not. You have to do more writing and preparing things in advance rather than getting together and brainstorming together. It's just different. And now we have time zones as well. Like you and I are very different time zones. Yeah. Coordinating that takes work and preparing, right? So yeah, it's just a different way of working. To me, it feels less spontaneous in some ways, but it can be more productive because it's easier for people to, once they know what they're doing, it's easier for them to just go and do it. It's easy to not be distracted. But it is less spontaneous, and in some ways, some of the collaboration methods don't work as well. Mm-hmm. Others work better and others work worse. So it's just an adaptation. But it's really hard to change midway through, right? Like that's what's hard.
To close this first video, I will say, I have a final question that maybe is a little bit, strong, but are you happy so far? Like when you wake up in the morning, are you like, yes, finally I'm making it? It's something like is real every day, like more real every day.
I wish we had been here sooner. It feels like it has been a challenging road. And it always is. For making any game is always challenging and hard and takes longer than you think. But I do feel really good about where we are, right? We have a game right now. It's already playable. People are in it having fun. We survey all of the testers and they tell us, we know that they are enjoying it, right? We aren't putting something out that people don't like. We get really positive feedback from surveying them, and it's amazing to see people get it, because the entirety of the idea is a little hard to get across, right? There's a lot going on in this game, and so when people get it and their eyes light up and they start realizing the potential in the way that having a living world interacts with giving players more freedom and letting them really own their space and all of that kind of thing, when people get it and they get so excited, that's awesome, right? That gives us all the enthusiasm needed to keep going through the hard parts, right? Because there are always hard parts. It's always a struggle. So yeah, I do feel good. I'd feel better if the industry weren't in such a challenging place right now, right? Because it sometimes feels like here we are with a game that is unique and fresh, and players are saying they want it, and we have the players saying so, and we have market research saying so, and yet the industry is in a difficult place, and money's hard to come by, and so on. So, that's why we're going to Kickstarter, because we can see that players want this. So if the industry itself is not in a place to be, as supportive as we would like, then we'll go to the players, because players want games that are fun, that push the boundaries, that show them things they've never seen before, that offer fresh new experiences. And I think we have one of those. It feels to me like we're sitting on a potential hit. We just need to finish it and polish it and make it great for everybody.
Yeah, I was speaking with some of my friends recently who play MMOs, and I presented to them Stars Reach, and simply by viewing the website, the few videos being displayed there, they were like, oh my god, I need to play this. Like, I want it because it feels different. And they started asking me questions like, what can I do? But can I do that? But can I break that? Can I grief? Can I build that? Can I travel there? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. You can do everything you want, probably. Who knows? And they go crazy, because then they want answers. I've managed many communities for different games, and I have to say that this is probably the very first game I see that is community driven, where developers think before developing an actual feature, and where I see that players have some sort of freedom when playing. Freedom in terms of creativity and having fun. Because yes, I agree with you, this game has potential to be fresh, to be different from the usual market we see every day. Game scoping concept left and right. I was amazed the first time I saw the technology behind, and I keep being amazed not only by the technology but also by the players that are playing every day. So probably I can say that it's working. It's working very good.
Yeah, it's a big, ambitious adventure. And I've certainly had people say, hey, this is too big, this is too ambitious. But I don't know. I see lots of games that cost 10 times what we do and are fundamentally another 3D action adventure or another, I've played this before and this has a different story and better graphics, but I've played this before, right? I am climbing all the spots with the white marks, and I am jumping across these chasms in the same way that I have in other games, and that kind of thing. And here we're trying to do something that really is different. And I believe that there is an audience for that. I believe that ultimately the game playing market rewards that they don't want to just play the same things with new skins over and over again, that they want fresh things, fresh experiences, new ideas that push boundaries. If we don't have ambition in games, then it's going to stagnate, right?
Yeah, right.
We have to be ambitious, and we have to try pushing boundaries in order to make new things. That's how games move forward.
Okay, so I guess that this is it. as like for the first episode, I will say. We don't know yet how we are gonna call this type of videos. If these are gonna be podcasts, vlogs, or dev vlogs, we don't know yet. We'll try to figure out. But I thank you, Raph, for your time and for answering all these questions. I hope that the community will write some questions below this video. Maybe we can pick some the next time, right? And we will see you guys in the next one. You want to say bye-bye?
Bye.
Oh my god, where do we okay. So, hello everybody, my name is Thomas, and I restart again because it's panic mode again. So, Raph, I created it's gonna be like this, okay? Every time.
Relax.